You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Kelly Barner, and today is Friday, June 3rd, 2022.
6.
When I was a procurement practitioner, I specialized in hired services. And since I was working for a grocery chain, that meant facilities maintenance, waste removal, and uniforms, just to name a few. That specialization taught me that the more complex a category is to manage, the more fun it is to tackle. And I'm sure everyone in this community has their favorites as well. Join us on August 11th as we come together virtually for Category Palooza, Art of Procurement's very own summer festival of category insights. I know we'll be discussing some of my favorite categories, along with our partners, Fine-Tune and Procurement IQ. And you know inflation and supplier relationships are bound to come up. Category Palooza is more engaging than the webinars everyone has fatigue from. We're running the 3-hour-long event on a platform that will allow you to chat directly with other attendees. And we've caught speakers jumping into the chat at times as well, even while they're presenting their sessions. We want to hear from you in real time and give you the opportunity to make new connections as well. Save the date and then sign up to hold your spot at Category Palooza 2022, August 11th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern.
5.
In this week's podcast, we've shared a session from our last virtual community event, Art of Procurement Digital Outcomes. Philip Eidson hosted a session with Jack Freeman, a partner at Peakspan Capital. He leads their procurement, supply chain, and payments efforts, and has worked with 20 of what they call scale-ups. Those are software businesses between $2 and $20 million. His responsibilities include finding new investments for Peakspan, leading the due diligence process, and then working with partners to drive more value. Given all of the digital options available to procurement teams today, I'm always interested in hearing Jack's perspective on tech.
And it's a really interesting point you make about the interconnectedness of procurement technology with the rest of the business that other tech stacks like a sales tech stack, like a marketing tech stack might not have. So perhaps be less hard on ourselves for pace of change and more think about, okay, how can we actually work through the complexity issue as opposed to, hey, work faster, so to speak. So let's get into some specifics, so which you were going to do before I just jumped in and asked you about that pace of change. What are you seeing from a category perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to dive in. The first one I'd note, I'm going to say spend analytics, but let's just call it data as like the most broad tech topic I could ever bring to you. People were getting excited about big data or data a decade ago. In every functional group, it proliferated all of software. The ability for folks to harness the power of lots of data at scale has really transformed like the entire technology industry, you can argue, over the last 10 years. That procurement is not excluded from that. And purchasing data, so like spend data, supplier data, all of this data, I'd say it's the most obvious trend ever, slapping us all in the face. But it's still not where it should be, in my view. I think you can boil down the prowess of a organization as a whole, but also a procurement organization or supply chain organization by how much visibility and insight they have into their operation. If you ask them a couple simple questions around where they're spending money, can they get that answer for you in a couple of minutes, a couple of days, or is it going to take a $60,000 engagement with Deloitte to get you that answer?
Yep.
All of those, are options. And with the data and the tools out there, it's fully possible to digitize your organization and have a handle on where every dollar is being spent and cutting it in a million different ways. And once you can harness the power of your spend data, then it gets fun, right?
Yeah.
Then we can talk about sustainability. We can talk about anything under the sun. But I would start with spend analytics and just harnessing data as the first trend of one that we've been talking about for over a decade, still in the early middle innings of adoption. And for any individual organization or market, if you can push that adoption to more full adoption or just more deep adoption per company, you're going to see the most outsized impact.
Mm-hmm.
If Jack is right, and we can boil down the prowess of the entire organization to their ability to access and leverage their data, then the position of procurement within that data ecosystem is critical. Spend, suppliers, ESG, risk, we have access to all of the data needed to inform executive level decisions. You can hear the full conversation in the latest Art of Procurement podcast, wherever you choose to listen to podcasts.
4.
One of the posts we ran this week at Art of Procurement is proof that a picture can be worth 1,000 words. It references the cycle of shifting procurement priorities that we captured and designed for our Procurement Inc. white paper series. Although, truthfully, when we discuss it internally, we just call it the hamster wheel. So I know you've got the visual, but what does that mean? The hamster wheel tracks the impact that external factors, such as economics, have on procurement's role in the organization. In boom times, we're all about value and relationships, and companies choose their chief procurement officers accordingly. But when there is a downturn, such as the one we find ourselves in today, the focus on value is quickly replaced by an urgent and myopic focus on savings, to the point where a new CPO may be brought in to reinforce that focus. We've acknowledged that reality and then countered with the advice that procurement can, scratch that, procurement must learn to ride the waves of boom and bust without ever giving over entirely to either value or savings. In addition, the more closely aligned with the business procurement is, the better able we will be to help them understand the long and short-term consequences of climbing back into the hamster wheel one more time.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
When you have the opportunity to ask an expert something, you try to pick a really good question. Well, we were recently joined by Joe Yakura, founder of the International Association for Data Quality, Governance, and Analytics, for an AOP Live session. Given data's importance to companies in general, and procurement in particular, we took the opportunity to ask him how he defines quality data. With his technical background, you might expect his answer to involve standard deviations or expiration rates, but it didn't. Here is what he said. The simplest definition of quality is whether or not the data meets your requirements. Since simplicity is always best, I think this is an excellent definition. What are you trying to do with the data? And is the data you have fit for that purpose? To learn more from Joe and Vishal Patel from Evalua in that AOP Live session, you can watch or listen to the entire event on demand from our site.
2.
In this week's episode of Dial P for Procurement on Supply Chain Now, I took 2 recent news stories about companies struggling to balance their desire to advance social causes with their shareholders' desire for them to stay in business. Unilever and Old Navy were both recently featured in the Wall Street Journal for similar reasons. Unilever has challenged all 400 of their brands to come up with a social or environmental mission to put at the heart of their marketing efforts, or else. As you may have read this week, their financial performance has slipped to the point where they are fighting off an activist investor. Old Navy tried to roll out more inclusive sizing in their women's clothing, offering sizes from 0 to 30 and extra small to 4XL, all together in one section. But they seem to have misgauged the allocation and have ended up with a lot of expensive inventory on their hands. The financial hit caused them to miss earning expectations, and their CEO was replaced as a result. I'm not going to rehash all of the facts here. You should definitely check out Dial P if you're interested in that. But I am going to offer up a procurement connection. Finance is always asking us, where did the savings go? Well, what if the savings were redirected to finance the company's ESG projects? It would give decision makers an incentive to choose cost-effective options, and the company wouldn't have to worry so much about taking their eye off the ball and diluting their results. And once those savings were converted into social or environmental impact, everyone inside of the company and out would finally know where the savings went.
1.
Just yesterday, we added an upcoming AOP Live session to our events calendar. Digital procurement is not easy. Don't go it alone. On June 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern, we'll allow all of us to ask the Corecentric team questions about why the business case we develop for tech investment rarely helps us out during or post implementation. If we just have the right team, challenges with adoption and utilization can finally become things of the past. Register to join us, and remember, there are no slides or scripts used in these events. They are driven by your questions, so you never know quite what you're going to hear. Don't miss out on this live discussion. Just go to artofprocurement.com/calendar to find out more. And you can find all of the links associated with the stories and events mentioned today at the show notes page for this episode at artofprocurement.com/podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.